You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome, everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, November 6th, 2025 at 7:35 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I thought tonight that I would talk about parenting and intergenerational repair of attachment conditioning. There's nothing quite as corrosive as parental guilt. I don't know if you've noticed this. And when people begin to do the attachment work, and you begin to reflect on not only your own childhood experiences, but the experiences that you then handed off to your kids. Sometimes that can trigger a response of that corrosive parental guilt. What I would say is, of course, that you have an 85% chance of inheriting the attachment strategy of your caregivers, which means that if you have kids, your kids have an 85% chance of inheriting your attachment system. And so that it's this transgenerational process that carries on from generation to generation in good fidelity, really. So ideally, what you would want to do is to repair your attachment first and then have kids, so that you just hand off a better attachment strategy to your kids. Actually, if you're in the process of raising your children and you do your attachment work, that will translate to your kids as well. When I was up at the Attachment Institute and I was talking to Mary Main about the work that we were doing and talking about how the three-pillar approach with the ideal parent figure protocol was actually changing people's attachment strategy. Her initial response to that was that it was a waste of time, that what we really need to do is focus on teaching parents secure attachment strategies when raising their kids. And there are certain programs that they have now where people come in and teach parents how to respond in a secure way to their children. And I think that I read about a program. No, I read about it, but I think what it said was that 12 interventions over a year was enough to shift people into providing an environment where their children can grow up to be secure. That first year of life is really the major time that happens. But a lot of us don't get around to the attachment work until after the active parenting period is over, and there's now the how do you relate to your adult children or soon to be adult children and recognize the attachment conditioning that you provided for them as you begin to understand your own attachment conditioning. And I think that the main thing that you do in the beginning is simply to apologize for the attachment conditioning that you provided them, that you acknowledge in hindsight that you didn't address the challenges of your own attachment conditioning. And to be fair, there actually wasn't a good way for you to do it before very recently. I mean, Dan Brown's book came out in 2017, and that's really been the first series of interventions that you could do that would actually reliably affect attachment conditioning. Before that, really, there wasn't much that worked. Um, um, there was some evidence that 10 years of therapy with the same therapist, if the therapeutic alliance was good, could have some effect on your attachment system. But uh, 10 years of therapy with someone is a lot of resources and also just a tremendous amount of luck that the circumstances would stay the same in your life and also the therapist's life, that you could uh, work with them for that period of time. I know in psychoanalysis, sometimes that happens. But even the evidence that 4 or 5 times a week psychoanalysis for 10 years doesn't shift your, I mean, certainly there's not evidence that it reliably shifts your attachment strategy. And then as you undertake the attachment repair work for yourself, what you then begin to do is to renegotiate the agreements with your children so that you fall more into the framework of what secure functioning relationships are like. Um, in the paradigm of parents taking care of children, parents take care of children. And so that if there's been some kind of preoccupation or some kind of uh, a demand for idealization, all of those things that tend to go along with the attachment conditioning, uh, you need to renegotiate those. You also have to recognize that you're the one who's doing the attachment work. And so that you're reneging on all of the agreements that you made with them. To, throw yourself out of the frying pan into the fire. Not only did you make all of these terrible agreements with them, you're now reneging on them. What would happen if they came to you and wanted to renegotiate? Would you be willing to do it? A lot of times you're not. So you may even have that history where they came and requested and you denied. Anyway, it's what it is now. And so we begin. Um, but you'll notice in kids as they grow up and as parents age, there'll be a time when that organically shifts and the kids then will take on the care of the aging parent, or they won't take on the care of the aging parent. And you really get a barometer of how well you did or didn't do with that, because the kids that um, uh, appreciate and gained enough out of the kind of parenting that you provided for them tend to be willing to take care of you. And the kids that feel that they didn't get enough in the way that you parent them will resent the obligation to take care of you and probably won't want to do it, or simply refuse to do it. It's one way to evaluate. Um, the basis of secure functioning relationships is to be authentic in the relationship. And so one of the areas also to begin to look at is how authentic are you in your relationship to your kids? Um, Kids want their caregivers to care about them and support them, their authenticity. And so how well do you do with that in terms of supporting and encouraging them to pursue the things that they want to do with their life, rather than supporting and encouraging the things that you think they should do with their life. Um, are they who you wanted? That's a question we might ask ourselves. Did we end up with the kids that we wanted? And how is that reflected in the way that we interact with them? Are they quite different from who we imagined they might be? I remember when my friend Suzanne was pregnant with her first child. Um, we were walking around LACMA one afternoon, and she said to me, I have this terrible fear about my child. And I said, what's that? And she said, that there'll be a Republican. So I said, they're Republican. You still have to love them, and you still have to take care of them. You don't get it out for the kid not being who you wanted. And kids, can be a lot of different things. They don't um, necessarily map that. You might examine, why did you have kids in the first place? What was it that you were thinking? What was it that they were supposed to do for you in that equation? And then let them off the hook for that. Let them be who they are. It's complicated now with kids too. Have you noticed the 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 uh, um, the different avenues of expression? When I was a kid, if you wore bell bottoms, it was a major act of rebellion. You grew your hair past the collar, a major declaration of rebellion. We get up to so many more things. And plus, there's technology to deal with. So I think in some, we did.
Oops, sorry. George.
Hi.
Um, Unlike the popular view of the attachment being formed in the first year, I don't fully agree with that. I think my opinion is that being a baby in the first year, it doesn't even speak. Like a baby, people generally have more softness towards babies who can't even speak. They just eat and sleep. It's usually what I've seen is around after 4, 5, 6 years old is when um, the parents' attachment, or they treat them as people that they can get angry with. That's when the attachment or neglect can happen more than the first year or the first 2 years of their lives.
Um, so you're born and you're entirely dependent on the way that the caregiver responds to you for care. And in some sense, uh, you have an intact brainstem, a partially formed right brain, not much in the way of a left brain. The left brain doesn't come online for a while. And you call out to the world for the care that you need without knowing that you need care or what kind of care. And then the caregiver comes to you and connects to you, right? They look at you, they empathetically connect to you. They try to interpret your expressions to understand what it is that you need. And then they provide care for you. And if they are able to understand the care that you need and they are able to respond uh, to your gesturing, you settle into a sense of ease again. And then the next time something happens, you flail and cry out, and are they there and attentive to you? And we begin to grow the right hemisphere of the brain in a structure that matches our understanding of the world based on the responses of the caregiver. And so secure people begin to grow the structure of a secure brain if their needs are met well enough. Then insecure and disorganized infants begin to grow the brain that matches that attachment conditioning based on what happens in that early crucible. So the actual physical structure of the brain is organized based on your interaction with the environment. And then as you grow up, of course, and the brain is more elaborated, it's all based on that very early uh, interaction experience that you have. So that the procedural memory, the perceptual database of what you can expect from the world just by being who you are is really formulated right from the very beginning. And then it begins to manifest itself in the expression of the language of the family later. Is that making sense?
It's just that the care for an infant who's 12 or 18 months is nothing but just sleep and eat. I mean, and bodily discomfort. The shout for care is just that, isn't it?
Well, this is the nature nurture argument. A baby that received simply the basic care without the nurturing might fail to thrive because they need that. There is no life without nurturing. There's no life without physical touch. If you've been around infants, what you'll notice is a big emphasis these days on skin to skin contact, hours and hours of skin contact with the caregiver. It orients the child toward care. If you were simply to feed the child and let them sleep without all of that attending care, they would not thrive. You know the wire monkey experiments? You know those? A sadist scientist who tortured baby monkeys with this experiment in a kind way of referring to it. But they made a wire monkey that had a nipple where the baby monkey could feed, and then they had an identical wire monkey that they then covered with terry cloth. And the premise was that the attachment to the caregiver was based on food, based on nourishment. But what they found was that the monkey would sit on the lap of the wire monkey that was covered by terry cloth because of the comfort of the softness of the terry cloth. And so that nurture was really the main thing. And that the baby monkey would sit there the whole time until they were hungry. And then they'd run over and they'd take a few sips of formula, and then they'd run back to the terry cloth wired monkey. So that actually you might say that nurturing is more important than simply the eating and sleeping is. And then your premise is that people aren't so cold-hearted that they would let an infant just cry it out, but you would also, I think, be wrong about that.
It's just that I've seen disorganized parents who are not, I mean, who are very caring. It's the first year of the baby that they've never had, and they're awfully caring and they're extremely careful because they're not emotionally triggered.
And then that might produce a secure child, but a child that grew up to be dismissing would be left in the crib to cry it out. They would be attended to,
Right.
often on a rigid schedule, not when they were hungry, but when it was time to feed them. They would sleep not when they were sleepy, but it was time to sleep.
It's just my argument is that these things might happen later, like 6, 7 years, when I can see them getting angry at the kids because now they have autonomy. Now they can face neglect and they can face rejection and all those stuff.
So we would say in the attachment world that the first year, at the end of the first year, you can tell what attachment strategy the child is using. With a strange situation, you can evaluate them. And that by 3 years of age, it's pretty fixed, that underlying basic attachment conditioning. Mostly, and then the mid-childhood period is another period of attachment conditioning, but it isn't the ground. It's the next level. It's what happens when you have autobiographical memory and you have that kind of referencing and also more agency. So what you're describing really would be what we would consider the second series of attachment experiences. And then the third one is when you hit puberty, on the other side of puberty, when the sexual drives are all engaged and there's the boost to cognitive thinking, and you can evaluate whether or not the caregivers took care of you in your interest, in support of you, or they took care of you in a way that was a benefit to them. If you evaluate that your caregivers took care of you in a way that was at your expense for their benefit, then the epistemic trust breaks. And if you evaluate at the end of that they did take care of you in the best way that they could, then the epistemic trust holds. And what that means is you shift out of them being the authoritative, controlling, protective parents into the coach mentor parents that then help you get what you want in life. So they, my godson, Thanksgiving a few years ago, said that he was so grateful that he had parents that helped him put his college application together, because he was able to go to a place that he wanted to go to, and he didn't think that he would have had the insight into how to put together the application if they hadn't helped him so much. That's the expression of security, right? That you have caregivers that have your interest in mind and understand what you want, and then they help you to try and get it. That's the function of that shift from the authoritarian, controlling, protective into the coach, mentor, parents. And so if you're looking to repair your relationship with your kids, that's one of the shifts you should pay attention to. That you're shifting into the coach, mentor position where you're helping them understand how to go for what they want. How's that? The basic structure of attachment is really laying the foundational, the whole structure of the brain. And what you notice in, secure functioning brain, there's this marvelous integration of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, activation, settling. And what you notice in dismissing people's brains, it's a suppression of the sympathetic nervous system. They don't activate. And there's a hyperactivation of the sympathetic nervous system. So they suppress emotion, they suppress the attachment system. There's a disconnection, a flatness, a cognitive bias in dismissing people that comes from the physical structure of their brain. And preoccupied people, it's the opposite. They activate. They don't settle. And there's no real active evaluation cognitively of whether the activation is legitimate or not. And disorganized people, it's just all over the place. It's chaotic. Hyperactivating sympathetic nervous system, hyperactivating parasympathetic nervous system, hypoactivating sympathetic nervous system, hypoactivating parasympathetic nervous system, and any combination of those. It's like standing on the brake and the gas pedal at the same time, often in their brains. So you undertake the work, your own work, to change your attachment conditioning. You don't get a new brain, unfortunately. You have the same brain that reacts in the same way. And what you get is a different way of relating to it so that you can respond you can still respond in a secure way, even though the brain is doing the thing that it's always done.
Sorry, even the reaction you said, but the relating is different?
Well, you notice that you're hyperactivating, but you don't. Then you develop ways to help settle it. But you also understand, you're able to mentalize that you're hyperactivated. And so you can, uh, for instance, understand the kind of responses that you would make when you're hyperactivated, the kind of responses that you would make when you're not hyperactivated. And you can mentalize the non-hyperactivated responses even when you're hyperactivated and make the non-activated responses even though you're hyperactivated, so that the relational experience of the other person is in the secure range rather than in the insecure range. That makes sense. You can recall what a non-activated response might be rather than just go with the activated one. Or you can recall what an activated response would be if you tend to be a deactivating person, that you're responsive, you're warm instead of cognitive in your response. Makes sense? The other thing, if you're attempting to repair with your kids, is to honor their timeline for the repair. Have you uh, attempted reconciliation or some kind of repair with them before? Have you successfully apologized and specifically apologized? Most of the time when there's a lot of umbrage in the relationship, there's also a sense of what happened, and so you need to hear that out. This can be sometimes quite daunting as a task. And you actually may have a different point of view than what they have on what happened and what the consequence of what happened is. But you can't argue it. You have to allow their point of view. And really, what that is this is what I think is going on. What do you think is going on? This is what I meant. What did you receive? And uh, and uh, and take on the expression of sadness that it wasn't ideal for them. In the parenting role, of course, your responsibility is to take care of them. Their responsibility is not to take care of you. And that's the framework of it. Until they're willing to take on the care for you, if related to your infirmary on old age, sickness, and death, that thing. And then, you flip it around. What did you do with your own parents? Did you take care of them at the end? Did you want to? Who did they pick? You know, everybody picks somebody, right? And that circle gets smaller and smaller. At the end, most people pick one person. Everybody else gets excluded. Who did they pick? Um, Well, the I have a friend who's now taking care of her mother who has Parkinson's. And Parkinson's, you it's essentially your nervous system shorts out. I don't know if you know Parkinson's, and so there's no way to direct movement, or there's no way to direct even speech. So she's in a position where she provided care until uh, um, her mom was no longer able to speak or move. And at that point, it became too difficult for her to provide the care. And so that they're utilizing a care center for it. But the difficulty of it was her sister had provided most of the care and then got burned out from doing it. And so she volunteered to take on the care. Uh, um, and I've known her for 20 years at least, and she was lovely. So it wasn't at all surprising that her kids would uh, step up and do that. PJ?
Yeah, I looked after my mom for the last couple of years of her life and moved in with her, which wasn't hard. We lived in the same house. I moved downstairs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in my mind, that was the deal, right?
Yeah.
And I was happy to do it and glad to do it.
Yeah. So I think that's what happens with good enough parenting. That's the response that people have. It's only when the parenting isn't good enough that there's a question in the child about whether or not they'll do it.
And yet I still refer to her as my wire mom in therapy.
And is she the nipple side or the terry cloth side?
Nipple only. But she had lots of wonderful traits and we grew up together. So there you go.
Right. Yeah. So it has to be pretty bad. 30% of the time or better is enough for security. So we're already talking about extremely harsh conditions to get into the insecure attachment, and then really terrible conditions to get into disorganization. The other piece of all of this, of course, is we're in this human conundrum where we live in these bodies. The bodies need care, they need comfort, they need soothing, they need sustenance, all of that stuff. We need to be in relationship to other people. The way our brains are built are these bundles of neurons that are only in brains of creatures that live in complex social groups. We are wired for it. And if we don't have that level of interaction, our nervous system responds as if we're in pain. The pain center for emotion and physical is the same pain center. There really isn't a difference in that sense. You're having a terrible emotional time, you can take 2 Tylenol and you'll feel better. And we live in, a capitalist society, which would really prefer to sell multiple toasters to the same family. So we all have to live apart. And I think maybe some of the affluence that a lot of us experience also gives us this desire to control our environment in a way that it's not, particularly when we're not conducive to collaboration, makes it harder. But that's in the West, and in the East, 4 generations of family will inhabit easily a single household. And they design houses that way, whereas we design them for a nuclear family, the allo family versus the nuclear family. So how do you beckon people to you? How do you get people to be around you so that you can live in these social groups, which is this process? So you might say, might extend it past the biological family to the family of choice. Who do you pick to fill your life up with? How can you make those relationships work? I think it's the conundrum of resolving the attachment conditioning so that you can move into intimate relationships, live in them, have the kids around if they want to come. And you know, it isn't unusual for those family systems to blow up either, I would say. You probably all know people who have some estrangement happening. PJ.
I really, one of the reasons I started to do this work is because I had a lot of trouble communicating with my adult daughter. But really, the work I've done on myself has made it so much easier for me to communicate with her because I'm not constantly just defensive.
Right.
And, you know, I'm just a lot better than I used to be. It's made it a lot easier.
Good. Yeah, I think it can be easier. So what do you say we do a little meditation practice? What would you like to do? Vipassana, loving kindness, ideal parent figure. So Vipassana is winning. Going once, going twice. Sold. So go ahead and settle in. We're going to do some concentration practice and then some insight practice. Okay. Let go of the meditation. How's that? So let's see what's coming up. We have family archaeology on November 15th, which is a Saturday. That's the annual how to go home and have a good time at the holidays, and at the same time understand your attachment conditioning and how the whole family system operates. Should be fun. We then have Kaleidoscope coming up on Friday the 28th. I think it's the day after Thanksgiving, so is that right? Let's see. Anyway, it's the 27th. It's not on my calendar. A Kaleidoscope is our monthly meeting. I always have a topic, and it's also I'll answer any questions you have about your practice. Let's see what's coming up on this. So attachment and ambition is the topic for this month. Navigating drive without dysregulation or dissociation. So how to go after the things that you want. Christian.
George, sorry, I was gonna ask about the see, hear, feel, rest
Okay,
you're out.
yeah,
Would that, maybe this is a silly question, but would that only happen if uh hear out rest, would that only happen if it's like silent?
yeah.
Okay.
One of the things, the importance of that is that our attention is mostly drawn to activations, but the sense gates are operating whether they're active or not. And so what we want to begin to do is sensitize ourselves to that. We might think that it's only the activations that matter, but it's also the lack of activation that's important to track.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to do a workshop on December 19th, the dating workshop again. Uh, um, Kaleidoscope on the 26th of December. And then the 29th through the 29th of December through the 2nd of January, we're going to do a virtual retreat. So 5 days from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. I hope to get through the entire level 2 curriculum in one. So if you've already done level 2 or you're familiar with the attachment stuff, this is a great way to refresh everything. And if you're still integrating it, it's a great way to reinforce it. And that takes us through the end of the year. We then have, starting up right away on next year, the first level 1 is starting on January 10th. So take a look at it. It's on the website. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope if you're resourced and you can make a donation, you will. There's a link on the website for that. Really appreciate your practice, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.